Yeah.
Thank you, everybody, for coming tonight. For those unaware, if you haven't been here before, bathrooms are right through that door. There's a men's and women's if they are needed. So tonight, the public meeting was scheduled specifically for Cosmopolis residents and to hear from residents about just thoughts regarding the ongoing planning process for the Central Grace Harbor Regional Fire Authority. This is prior to the plan being finalized and submitted to the county next month for a vote in April. A meeting is intended exclusively for RFA planning discussions. And we're going to be open for questions. Fire Chiefs Matt Miller and Dave Golding were able to join us for any sort of background information that might be needed, although I do want to remind people that the plan is not finalized. It is not final, and some final details as well as some of the numbers and taxes and all that stuff. It's not final, so it's not quite ready yet. It will be, of course, on the final approval before it goes out to voters, and there will be numerous public meetings and information being sent out prior to the elections once the plan is finalized, so the voters are aware of what's being considered. So, like I said, tonight's topic exclusively regarding the RFA planning process, but we're open to questions. We just ask that anybody who has a question, you try to speak loudly so it can be picked up by the camera, and you introduce yourself, and that way anyone watching online can know what's going on as well. But we're open for any questions.
My question is about the voting.
Can you introduce yourself?
I'm sorry, I'm Kamal Mason.
Thank you.
My question is about the voting process. Once it comes to a vote, is it everyone in Aberdeen, Hoquiam, and Cosmopolis voting yes or no? Or is Cosmopolis citizens voting for whether Kazi is joining or not?
Once the plan is finalized and it's put up to the vote, it would be all three cities as a cumulative vote.
Yes or no, like voting
Uh,
one way or the
if
other?
if it should be formed or it shouldn't be formed.
Okay,
But it's not if all of Hoquiam says no, but everyone else in Aberdeen and Kazi, Hoquiam would still be a part of it as well. And so, and vice versa, Aberdeen, Kazi elsewhere. It's not a
So we
thing,
have a
it's not a
very
city by city.
small portion of the vote. The entire vote comes out of Kazi because we have a small.
Yeah,
Voting
we have the smallest
population.
voting base out of that.
When do we as a council have to vote whether we're in or out?
We're already in on the planning process. Before the plan is put off to the auditor's office and the elections department, it would have to be, the final plan has to be approved by the council. So that would be theoretically at the regularly scheduled meeting this month. If there's like a week where we have to finish up some numbers, we would then call a special meeting, but it would be before February 13th, I believe. Give or take. It's the second Tuesday in February. So the second Monday is when, or the Monday before that is when the plan has to be submitted to the county. It's the day before the next election.
Cross bearing 1006 Bell Drive. So the way I understand it, Jim had an excellent question there. The council will have the numbers on what it's going to cost us per thousand or by meter hookup or whatever prior to council voting to go forward or to drop back. Is that correct?
Yeah, the final plan will have this is what's being put out to voters as it's this percentage, it's this cost. The same thing that's gonna go out to all the voters, the council will get it and will approve that plan of what goes to voters that says the numbers.
And we, the citizens, will see those numbers prior to council so we can have input to our council people.
Yeah, the plan should be on the next agenda.
With the numbers and correct?
Yeah, the
The cost.
plan, and I would imagine that the language that would be in the ballot should be ready at that time
Are you
too.
talking for ballot itself? Or are
No,
you
the
talking
RFA
about
plan.
Going to the plan, in the plan, I'll say, the $1.50 fire that's currently being paid, the 50 cent, and then the availability.
All of that will be in the plan. So pretty,
If
Okay.
everything's on schedule, the next RFA meeting, which is next week, that would be the final, if everything's on schedule, right?
Yeah.
That plan, the RFA would to that committee's vote next week, the Aberdeen, Hoquiam and Kazi representatives. They would have the final plan next week to look at to vote that, yes, this is what we're going forward to the city councils to vote on.
So we, the people, will have an opportunity to see those numbers to give you feedback or Jim feedback or any council people feedback as our thoughts prior to you
Yeah.
deciding yea or nay, correct?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Ed Van Sickle. So all three city councils will have to approve it, is that correct?
correct.
Okay.
Yeah. There would have to be a majority from each city approving the final plan before it gets put out for the ballot. Or, I mean, anything regarding the planning process as it's going, or? We want to, I mean, this is absolutely your guys' time, but we're open. We know that people had questions, so, yeah, go right ahead.
Call Mason again. I'm relatively new here, so
Yeah.
sorry if this is all you having to repeat, but in terms of what services Kazi would get out of this RFA, is it just that we have South Aberdeen fire department serving us, or do we have actual fire department folks here in our Kazi Fire Department?
If it gets passed, this fire station, the South Aberdeen Fire Station, the Hoquiam Station would all be under the same umbrella. So as far as are there going to be one person here, 6 people here, 1,000 people here, that's not like specifically outlined in the plan. I mean, a lot of it is, this is the plan. This would, at the time, the plan is to have this maintained, be primarily volunteer station. There's the battalion chief in the current structure scheduled to be in here, and that could change over time. Anything as far as staffing, distribution, and things of that nature, that would be commissioner's decision, but that would be after approval. And then with us being a part of this right now, as part of the planning process, if it gets approved by voters, there would be a Cosmopolis representative specifically as one of the commissioners on the fire authority, where because we're a part of it now, that is the opportunity. So we would have 1/3 of that say theoretically.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Linda Springer, has there been any discussion about who would be the commissioner from Cosmopolis?
No.
Representing,
And that's going to be up to the voters as well.
okay,
So that would be the same as, there would be one that would represent the area, but the voters would vote for who that would be, similar to hospitals or any sort of junior tax.
That vote would happen after the approval of the RFA going through by the voters, then there would be an election afterwards, right? In the next cycle, I believe, for that representative
Yeah,
to be on that commission.
so if it gets approved, then the RFA would effectively be operating as if it would take time before it actually gets officially underway. So then you would have the planning process, and then there would be an election for commissioners, and then that would go forward. And that could be anybody who is a registered voter is eligible to
Right.
apply for that.
Advanced Sickle, is it already predetermined how long a term that would be for that person from each city?
Yes, that's state law.
So it's broke down,
Yeah.
because you don't want two commissioners out of the three to leave at the same time or have their term end at the same time. And I have to read the plan to see what city gets what, but let's say Hoquiam, the first person elected gets 2 years. Aberdeen's first person gets 4 years, Tallahassee first person gets 6, and then every term thereafter equals 6 years.
Yeah.
So that creates a rotation where you never have two commissioners exiting at the same time,
Or it'd be,
every 2 years.
Every 2 years. there
yeah.
would be an election for a member.
and that would be lined out in the election process.
Yes.
Term.
Yeah.
yeah, that's all, and that's all, again, like state law, similar to port commissioners or PUD, that this is established how it is, and that's in the plan as well, that one of them would serve 2, 4, 6, and then they could run again, but Yeah.
John Bramstead. So does the plan right now contain any mechanisms for expanding Aberdeen paid personnel, since admittedly they're already understaffed, yet they'd be taking on more service area?
as the plan sits, I mean, that additional staff, I mean, I don't think I needed to tell you that we're understaffed, they're understaffed, Hopeland's understaffed, so there would be additional staff that would be proposed and planned.
Is that included in the funding mechanism of the model to the numbers that are being put forth?
As of the last numbers, yeah, that's expected to be a part of that.
And if I could.
Yeah,
speak to that
go right
in
ahead.
Aberdeen. So this year, actually, a little bit of history, in the initial planning process, we looked at adding a total of 7 positions. So 6 of those being line staff firefighters, and then 1 person would come in and fill the administrative role as a medical services officer, which would be a person in charge of all our EMS operations, really. We still kind of have that train of thought going through this new process with the 3 cities. But what had happened now is in Aberdeen, effective this year, we're adding 3 additional staff. So we're taking that 6, we're taking it from, well, 6 or 7, we're taking it down by 3. So we've already got half of those positions on the book. So you see an increase of 3 line positions and 1 administrative position if they are big ones. So there is a bump to kind of help out really some of that.
Janine Brown instead, just for clarification, you were saying that originally there was gonna be like 6 positions needed, but that was before COSI was added. So now that you're gonna be serving a larger district, will when you guys meet for your next meeting, will you be looking at what it's gonna take for our coverage?
We've already done that.
Yeah.
We've done that in our response planning and models of what we think would work. So by adding these extra staff, it helps to alleviate the influx of adding cosmologists. Be honest, the plan says, let me back up, not the plan, but the original study that we should actually be adding more like 9 to 12. But we know that's really unrealistic. So we kind of found a happy medium with that, and feeling comfortable with that addition, we would still be able to absorb the cosmologist side of things without too much of a hit.
And Cosmopolis has been in the planning process since July or August, give or take 6 months or so. So the plan has modified with myself and council members Carlisle and Wenzel through this time. So it's not as if they're just adjusting it to add us in the last month or so that we've been part of this plan. Yeah, go right
Is
ahead.
the plan still that the nearest manned station would be the south side station, that no personnel would be, we want to have an engine company worth of people in Cosmopolis? Paid, anything?
Not like a full, like you're saying that, I mean, that 9 to 12, I mean, if we had our brothers, I mean, it would be great to have a full staff here, but I mean, with the staffing levels, we'll have the volunteer staff. And there was discussion of having a battalion chief here and then expansion as things kind of get worked out and as the call volumes get adjusted through the central, but it's not just gonna come in and like the South Aberdeen station's not just gonna be run out of here.
So
off
basically,
day
be
one.
like it's kind of hazard. You have volunteers with Aberdeen support. That's what we began.
It would all be one thing. So they would be more
I
of the
get that,
Aberdeen and
but
Hopeland
as far
over
as-
here,
I
but
get that, as far as your staffing, it'd be basically what's always been.
Correct.
The volunteers that come and
In
you
the
got the support
presentation that we,
Yeah.
myself, Chief Golding, has presented to the RFA committee, will be to, continue to enhance the volunteer status and staffing down here and turn it into running shift work. Basically nighttime shifts for now, and then if, we get an influx of people who have daytime available, then start a rotation and start manning this station more often, if not all the time. And then in the great future, and all of a sudden, Grace Harbor becomes wealthy and we can hire a bunch of people, then obviously this would become a 24-hour man station.
But yeah, expanding on the volunteers that would be here. So it'd be like a training model, similar, I guess. I mean, it's at little apples to oranges, but like Raymond, where it's getting the training and training for future possibilities at one of the other stations or even in the region, but
Yeah. as
putting it
part of
through
that,
a deeper
we've had
training.
Discussions of a rep.
Yeah, thank you. That was.
Yeah, and that's where, for those of you not familiar with that concept, that is where you have to have people, they live at the fire station, that's where they live, in exchange for living here, they've got to put an X number of hours and such, and it's a great, we both started like this, so we're big fans of it. It's a great opportunity for our local kids to be able to go somewhere locally who want to be in the fire service. And we can get them in, we can train them up, and if all goes well, we can even hire them. So, we see this as a huge opportunity, not just for Aberdeen Hogan, but really for the whole harbor. Because it'll be kind of a pipeline, if you will, for potential hires.
Yeah, go ahead.
Janine Brown, stands. My question is then, if everything passes and we are a volunteer station here, would whoever is the overseer of this rural district be the one that the volunteers will be responding to?
as far as like a chain of command.
Yes.
Yeah, so yeah, within the RFA, there will be somebody that will be appointed to a volunteer coordinator, for lack of a better term. And so that would be the individual that would be for the RFA underneath the fire chief, probably, making sure this runs smooth and dealing with all that is this station. So, yeah.
And then with that, those volunteers would also be falling into the ranks of all the other firefighters. Just right down the chain.
Yeah, they actually, it's when you look at an organizational chart, it's funny, this group here will live in two different places in our old chart. They'll live under here, under support services, underneath the volunteer coordinator, but they also will live under operation. And be part of that operational response model, not just for COSB, but for the entire RFA, just like the staffing in Aberdeen and Hope Wyndham is part of your operational model here, rather than being separated.
Yeah. go ahead.
Tom Diffler, has the city council made the decision to join the RFA already? And have they had enough contact with the citizens to find out if the citizens actually want to become part of the RFA?
We voted to be a part of the planning to put the plan together.
Right.
And then the residents are gonna vote if we're gonna be a part of the RFA. Like I said, this meeting, the last meeting, and I mean, discussions at council and all of the planning meetings since the summer that have all been here. I mean, there's been public that has participated
Right. But you've already made the decision to join the
to
RFA.
be a part of the planning.
Right,
So
so
the-
I'm asking, when do you make the decision to either join or not join the RFA?
So, I mean, I guess hypothetically, we are part of the prospective RFA already because we voted to be a part of the plan. Once we finalize the plan, then that would be at the next meeting, then it goes to voters if it happens. It's not we're not
Yeah,
part of the RFA.
The council would have to approve it if it stays on schedule at the next council meeting this month.
I mean, so I understand we're part of the planning process.
Right,
I
but
understand that,
the
you
also,
actually join
but-
and be,
the council would have to vote yes.
Okay.
At the next, go ahead. At the
Oh,
next,
I-
meeting. No, go ahead.
You're completely, what he's saying is 100% correct. The council needs to vote for it.
Right.
All three councils have to vote for it. But with that being said, that if any one of the councils vote no, the entire plan dies. Because the entire plan has been built around all three cities.
Yeah.
So if Causey and Aberdeen go, I don't know, towards the end of this month, whatever the next council meetings are, the 25th and the 26th, let's say. And they both vote for it, but Hopeland votes no at their last council meeting, then the whole thing dies and goes away. So if Aberdeen votes no and the other two vote yes, the whole thing dies and goes away. If Causey votes no, the whole thing dies and goes away.
Yeah.
And then if the other groups want to pursue it, they have to start all over and go back to another year's worth of planning to build the program back up or the plan back up without the third city.
Yeah, and like I said, we've been in this planning process with public involvement and stuff for like 6 months, that we're a month or so away from the planned put it out to the ballot. So I mean, if Aberdeen or Hoquiam, let's say, were looking to not be a part of it, I kind of would have hoped they would have said something sooner, or us, either way, because if it, after a year and a half or 2 years or so of planning, I mean, it all could just go away, if one of the cities decides not to go through.
And so, Linda Springer, so at the next council meeting, which is the 18th, so there'll be an official vote of the council at that time, is that correct?
To approve the plan.
Right, and so will that be publicized, the council, they'll vote at that time, or will we? People attending will know, how will the citizens get that information? It sounds like,
Which information, that if we are,
The council
if we
is-
approve the plan?
right.
Yeah, if we approve the plan, then, and then it would be put out to,
I understand it's going out, but
yeah,
what I just heard is that the council has to vote.
we have to
And-
approve the plan before it goes to the
Is that
ballot.
correct, Miles?
Yeah, so it would have to be on the agenda for the next council meeting. As long as everything stays on track, because we have another RFA meeting next week. That has to go through as well for this to stay on track.
Okay.
So I tend to run in circles sometimes, so, my mind.
Back to financing a minute, Mr. Mayor. Let's make an assumption that we approve it, the whole thing comes to fruition.
Okay.
Does our current, I think it's an EMS charge, it's on our water bill, does that disappear and then a new fee for this whole thing comes together as one? And is that on our property taxes or is that a monthly billing on our water bill?
I guess I can kind of only speak to, because the financing isn't totally finalized. I mean, the best answer would be yes, as the plan is kind of set.
Okay.
So, on both. So as the plan, the last iteration of what we had saw, like I said, it's a living document, so we could try to
Yeah.
finalize it. It would be, property taxes would be designated away from the city, and they would go specifically towards the RFA. But like the EMS availability and charges such as that may still be on the, be there as part of it. The property taxes as a whole are the same property taxes that kind of come in and fund it as it sits now, which, as we know, that's the funding is only limited. So what that title, it's not going to be what was the title on the last one? The benefit charge. So it'd be like taxing plus X,
Taxing?
whatever. Yeah, so
So the EMS.
Yeah, it's like-
The availability fee isn't included with RFA?
So what it is, Carl,
It's
the
we-
property
yeah.
tax, so, for example, the RFA gets $1.50 per thousand on your property taxes for your
Okay,
fire service,
sure.
that comes out of the city's property taxes that we already collect.
Right.
So there's no increase to the citizens for that. Then there's an EMS levy of roughly 50 cents per thousand, that would be in addition, because we don't currently have that. And then you would also have the ambulance availability fee on your utility bills. You currently have one. I don't know what the final number is going to be on that for the RFA because they're still working on that. So hopefully in the final plan, then we would have the final numbers to be able to present to the citizens. So they will be doing a lot of outreach. There'll be multiple meetings in all three cities so that all the citizens can have that information.
If I may add into that, an easy way to think of it is what you have today goes away. As far as paid for, any fees, levies, whatever, for all three cities. It all goes away, gets replaced with what the RFA plan wants to do.
Okay.
I think that's what you're asking.
That's exactly what I was asking.
Yeah, so there's no double dip,
Well, that's what I was looking at. If
You're
you're-
not paying an RFA and an ambulance availability.
That's
Right.
Okay,
Yeah,
real good,
we have
thank you.
that, but it's only gonna go to the RFA. You're not gonna have RFA one and a city of Cotton, frankly. So
Okay.
whatever funding mechanisms are in place, get that.
And the weird thing with that is that each individual city charges that and then pays the RFA. Just because of, they already send out a monthly bill. So you pay $5 and then they shell it over here, right? That's just the billing mechanism. They don't see the money except for they watch it go right.
Strictly a pass-through. That's all it
I
is.
mean, as it sits, I mean, looking at the last kind of numbers we got, I mean, talking about the need to add staff and this and that, and like just running a larger operation for all cities. It will, if it gets passed, it is going to cost more to voters. I mean, it's not going to get passed and be cheaper. I mean, there's just really no realistic way of doing that. So there would be an additional cost. The exact, like, is it going to be an EMS availability fee or, insert the verbiage, whatever that finalize is, but it is going to cost more, but the city's not going to be charging and the RFA is does that make sense? Kind of.
Not really.
You're gonna pay more for what you get today. You're gonna pay more if it's an RFA.
Yes. Yes. But I, like I said, that just like if anything, I mean, the costs are going up. I mean, everywhere. So I mean, there's more funds that are needed for this type of service, and this is an opportunity to combine resources to eliminate having those kind of different oversights and the different things and collaborate it, but there would be an additional cost if approved.
So I wouldn't say it would be paying more for nothing, because
Yeah,
they
no.
have a very elaborate call out structure in this RFA plan right now, where it's, right now, we're paying additional fees for Aberdeen on first call out. And that's because we do not have enough members on our fire department, right? But even when we did not do hospital transports, for example. So we still had to have Aberdeen come in. If you needed to go to the hospital because you broke your foot, they still had to come in here, right? So the way things are right now, we are paying an increased rate because we don't have enough members. And it's being covered by Aberdeen on a interim basis. So we're on a 6-month contract, which could end at any time. And that's, I think, something that we all need to realize is our first call out response that we're getting for 6 months right now. That you could get a change in whatever, and we just don't have that option anymore. So then we're really left in a predicament, I would call. To me, this shores up response and guarantees response to this community. Which you might want to speak more to that, but I think there is I would never say we're paying more for the same, because it would be a lot different.
Miles, thank you for the clarification on that. That makes more sense.
If I could kind of add to what he's saying, there is. As it is today, you've got 3 fire departments that all operate independent of each other. By combining the 3, it becomes more sustainable and more seamless operation. And so when, I'll just use an example of a call, and this happens to us all the time, and I'm gonna put a cosmic spin on it. Is there's an EMS call in Cosmopolis. And my Southside station is out. Let's say they're at the prison. My headquarters ambulance is at Walmart, and my backup ambulance, which is laying up a fire truck now because of my staffing level, they're up on Bel Air at a chest pain call. And my battalion chief has to say, I've got nobody, let's call Hoquiam to go help Cosby out. So they're going to call dispatch and say, get me Hoquiam for mutual aid. Okay, that takes time. They call Hoquiam. Hoquiam says, I've got Matt coming ambulance up in Tulips, and he's got another one, on a call somewhere else in his town. He's got nobody to send. So these got to call back and say on the radio, I've got nobody. So my battalion chief has to go and, well, now what do I do? Who do I send? Well, let's try Fire District 2. Hopefully they'll come in from Central Park. And if not, then, it is each time that happens, and we're busy enough, that happens quite a bit of having to call mutual aid. There's inherent delays in that process. As one entity, it's seamless. Is that call comes in, if that Southside ambulance is not in the house, they're out on a call, that headquarters ambulance knows it's coming. Or if that rigs out, then the next one knows. There's not this, hey, can you help me? Back and forth, it's seamless. And I hate to throw out, time is muscle, but a heart attack, time is money. The quicker we can get advanced care to you, the better it is. So that's just an example of how we can streamline your process to get needed help to you quicker.
That also plays into fire response. So there's a handful of the retired guy or volunteers here. You guys all know how important it is, of how quick it is to be on scene and how you need as many hands as you can get. Currently, as you're sitting today, because the city is contracting with Aberdeen for fire response, you are automatically getting Hoquiam because Hoquiam has an automatic agreement with Aberdeen. Under the RFA plan, it would be the similar, what you see today. It's automatic, it's initial, there's no holdup. But right now, you are getting for a structure fire in Cosmopolis, If one of the current volunteers or two of them can show up, you got their engine. You've got 2 engines, an ambulance and a battalion chief coming from Aberdeen, and an engine with 2 more firefighters coming from Oakland. If you upgrade that to a second alarm, which is just the next step, I'm gonna use the Cosby Mill as an example. We had the fire this summer. You ended up with 2 engines and a battalion chief and an ambulance from Aberdeen, 2 engines and an ambulance from Hoquiam, a chief from Aberdeen, a chief from Hoquiam, and an engine from District 2. And because of the scenario going on, the battalion chief that got here tripped that quick. And so in less than, we ran the numbers, what, 15 minutes?
Yeah.
12 to 15 minutes, you had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 engines, 2 ambulances, a battalion chief, and 2 chiefs on scene. That's what you're gonna get in the city of Aberdeen or city of Cosmopolis for a fire response.
Plus,
15 minutes out.
and I can go to bridges, yeah, that's for us on any side of town. Add to that in the RFA, whatever response that the Cosmopolis station can muster at that time too.
Yeah.
So, you're just creating a much more robust, effective response force, we like to call it. NFPA standards, which NFPA is not for fire protection. And they are the standards that kind of govern how fire departments operate. Yeah, anything to do with a fire, with anything, NFPA has a standard. Well, in the deployment of resources and personnel, they say a minimum of 15 people on scene of a structure fire to be compliant with their standards. And if you're using an aerial device, they jump that up to 7, go a ladder. We can bring that to bear on the initial response. If everybody's in the house. Ready to respond. So, we're able to meet those needs and requirements throughout the whole RF.
Yeah,
I'm Janine Brownstead. My question is, if we, the 3 cities all go and say, yeah, I want to do this. Right now, Cosby is paying Aberdeen X amount of dollars for service. Once the plan goes through, we're gonna be paying into the plan. Are we still going to have to be paying Aberdeen until whatever? The plan is actually up and running. They've got everything in place.
if everything is like it is today, then yes. So for the first, we would run as is. The city would still maintain until the RFA officially kicks over, was it January 1st. So yes,
So are we gonna be paying double?
but
You don't start paying till the next. For the RFA, is that what you're asking? The RFA money, that doesn't collect for till January 1st, 2024.
So we have a,
Right? Is that what you're asking?
we have a provision that in that first year, there's a lag of those funds coming in from the county. It's always like a year behind, think of it that. During that first year, the cities will prop up the RFA, if you will, and they'll give us our allowance. And we'll be able to operate during that first year, and then the taxes kick in and we're off and running. So, but as far as the current contract that we have, that would go away.
we would still be operating, thank you. So if it gets approved by voters in April, then it's as if the RFA exists. The taxes don't start until January 1. It's not official until January 1, but it would be operating as an RFA initially. So we're not paying Aberdeen that the 27.95 per unit or 20,000 or so a month. We're operating as an RFA at that passage. So yes, so it's not doubling up, I guess.
What's the part about the city bolstering it that you have said for that interim time?
We would still, until it becomes an RFA officially in January 1, the city is still operating. We would still continue to add volunteers, we would still continue to fund everything. But
In
if
the
we're
budget that we
operating
have.
as an RFA. So that the different charges, it would adjust, so it wouldn't be doubling. It. I think if that's what we're going for.
But is this money for propping it up coming out of the current budget that you just passed? Or where's
As
this money coming from?
Yeah, it would be coming out of the budget.
So this has been put into the budget already.
We've already got, I mean, we paid what, what is it, 20?
This would be the next,
Yeah,
not this year.
we're,
It's paid for by your EMS charge.
Yeah.
On your monthly bill. That's where this revenue would be coming out. It is currently,
Uh-huh.
and will be also between the time it is passed and to the time the RFA officially takes or starts.
So we'll be paying for the RFA and then also paying for the EMS fee that we have right now for a certain period of time.
residents will always be paying for fire and EMS coverage. Up until the RFA takes over, it's just the RFA. It's the charges that are approved by voters. Until that time, residents are still paying for those services.
They can't collect the RFA fees until January 1st of 24. So it's not, I see what you're saying, like, we're paying for services right now and you're asking if, well, are we gonna pay what the RFA needs because they're not collecting until January 1st? And I would say no, because we're paying for the services that we're providing now.
Well, I'm not sure exactly what I'm asking, but what I heard him say was the cities are gonna prop this up.
Because so the RFA would be approved. We would still have to operate fire stations, so that's essentially the propping up would be, we still have to keep things functioning until the RFA goes into effect January 1st.
So where does the money to keep that functioning come from?
It's the money you're already paying.
From what we're
It's
doing
still
right
paying
now.
right
Because they wouldn't call themselves RFA either until January 1st. So it'd be those pass-throughs go into effect January 1st. The RFA starts January 1st. Those plans, the plans, the response plans and everything's are being put into effect in the meantime, but if both official paying and response as an RFA is January 1st.
So
And
our status basically isn't going to change, not until that January.
We would be operating as the RFA on passage, so the status would be different. I mean, I guess so over the past year or so, we've been paying those funds. That's the 2796, I believe, is the number per unit. So the city has just taken that out of the general funds and funds, and just kind of eaten that as we tried to rebuild the department. We just had to up that fund, but it is still not at the level that is the costs going out. So we're not, the costs are always gonna be there for service. I think I'm just digging myself further, making it more complicated. So this is from the plan as it last sits, that the operation, if effective, the remainder of the effective year shall be funded by the funds budgeted for fire department services in each jurisdiction.
So what you're paying now is what will get paid until January of 24. And then all the RFA things will take it, all the funds will switch to going straight to the RFA.
But what about the taxes? Because the taxes that are paid that come in on January of 2024 are actually paid by us in 2023. Right?
If it's, I believe that I know, this might be more of you, that they calculate the taxes, so like in November or whatever, when you get this is how much your house is worth. Until we get those numbers, we don't know how much the RFA is getting funded, and so that's why it's kind of a delayed.
So the taxes, the property taxes we collect, say in 2023, are based off 2022 valuations on your property. So, but you collect the following year. So like the April and October payments that you send to your property, or your property taxes are based off your prior valuations. So the first property taxes that the RFA will collect will be in April of next year, if it passes. So those portions of the property taxes will go to them, the cities won't get them.
Yeah, but then what happens, because our budget is so tight,
Mhm.
that money is currently earmarked for something.
So this, it doesn't affect this year's. This year's we'll still collect it, even if the RFA passes in April. That doesn't change the property taxes the cities collect this year. They will collect in 2024 because they're not official till 2024. Does that make sense? Yeah.
Yeah, and part of it too is, there are some services involved in that the cities will be doing for the RFA. Because the RFA won't be able to do this themselves, such as finance. Because we're not gonna be mature enough to have our own checkbook, so we'll have a finance department, human resources department, Aberdeen will agree to cover that. IT support, and there's a laundry list of things that help the RFA become successful, the cities will be doing for the RFA. As we move forward and as RFA, as I think it's more mature, and they could take on those other functions down the road.
And until the commissioners kind of come into play, because there's gonna be 6 or 8 months or so before, when it's just gonna be operating as if, and then the commissioners will set all the structure and the finances and build their own stuff. So,
Advanced signal.
Yeah.
It's been stated that we will receive the same service at a higher cost. But it's also been stated that they've already seen that they need to hire, I think, 7 more employees. So we're really getting more services because people were service. We're getting more services for more finances. Is that correct? Or can you explain that?
I would, like we say, it's not the same. I mean, it's very basic to say that it's gonna be like the same services going forward, that it would be the more streamlined, we would have access to availability of more staff and everything if it gets passed. So it's not just a 1-for-1. We just put a new sign out front, that it's an RFA. It's the higher cost will come with greater accessibility, not having to rely on second tones, that unified approach. So
Right,
the
so
higher
it's-
cost comes with more benefits.
Right, yeah, that's the point I want to
Yeah.
make, that we're getting more benefits.
Yeah.
And we're paying more money, not getting the same benefits, we're getting more benefits.
Yes, and I think that anybody in Aberdeen, Holcomb, or Cosmopolis will tell you that any of the departments, and this is probably for a lot of departments, but fire's been the most notable over the last 10 years or so since this discussion kind of started, that the funds that come in are not enough to provide the level of services needed, primarily EMS, obviously. But so the costs and the needs are going up. This is a way to streamline it, and instead of everybody just charging a ridiculous amount each as needed.
But we
But-
still end up with a volunteer situation here in Causey.
At the initial steps down the line, that could adjust and grow, but there's no, it's not as if the plan states that immediately, like I said, there's an entire engine company just over here or whatever, that as it grows and that streamlined process grows, and we'll have better trained volunteers, more on-staff volunteers, and so better, more comprehensive service, but yes, the volunteer aspect would still remain.
So does the RFA plan lay that out in terms of a longitudinal plan? Like out so that we can see what we get now and what we get, say, a decade from now?
Not really. I mean, there's the idea of what could happen, but that is also going to be rely on property taxes and the commissioners and what they feel the plan should be and what they feel the focus should be. So it's impossible to say within 6 months after passage, we're going to have 7 people here and their names are going to be blah, 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 or like anything that's super specific like that. We've got the idea of what the planning commission has said this is what the plan looks like, but when the new commissioners come in, they can make all sorts of different staffing changes, but that's why having someone on Cosmopolis, I don't anticipate that coming, but it's possible. Yeah, sorry.
I just wanted, he's on the right track. I just wanted
Yeah.
to be a little bit more.
I tend to be all of it,
Maybe
so.
not do this.
Well, you're
I'll try not.
You're the expert.
With this, and I don't remember, what was it, 2 or 3 months ago, we made a presentation to the RFA committee and whatever public was here. Inside of that, I've been working with Nick and Mark, who are a couple of your current volunteers. And they've given me some information about what's going on here. With that, with the RFA, opening up the, Nick, what's the word on, the boundaries of the welcoming volunteers to be not just Cosmopolis, but Cosmopolis, Aberdeen, and Hopeland. Dave and I probably get 10 to 15 calls a year each from local, usually younger kids. Do you guys have volunteers? I want to get into the firefighting thing. No, sorry, we don't. You might have to call some of the outlying places. I usually direct anybody in Hopeland to go talk to Fire District 6 or 10, Wishkah or North Hopeland, because that's the closest to Hopeland. And I think Dave talks about anybody over here, Central Park, down to Arctic. I'm not sure what the status is of who was accepted into Kazi before now. With that, that opens up the potential for more or increased volunteers. But we can't say, hey, on day one, we're gonna have 50 volunteers, because we have no control over that. What we can say is, as the numbers grow, this is what we want to do. Between 0 and, Nick, help me out with the math that we were doing, 15 volunteers. We can schedule 2 people per night, every night of the month, to work a 12-hour shift in the station, staying here. When we get to 30 or 45 volunteers, then we can do this. And when we get to this number, we can do this. But we can't put a date on it because, again,
Well, I wasn't asking for a specific date. I was more like trying to figure out. Right now, Kazi doesn't have a fire department like Aberdeen has a fire department. And so this plan is the solution to the fact that we don't have a fire department, basically, and we get to
No,
vote on it
not-
once.
And it's a very, like,
Still have a fire
we,
department, volunteers and all
Yeah.
that same stuff that we have right now, basically. I mean, we have volunteer firefighters right now in Kazi.
No.
yes.
Yes.
No?
Yeah. The fire department has never closed, volunteers are here and we're continuing to accept applications and like,
So we have
yeah.
a department
Yes.
now,
It is not as
Still-
robust as it has been. Yes.
still gonna have a volunteer fire department that RFA has.
We,
So, but what
well,
we're looking at, like,
we would have a station that would be designated as the hub of the volunteers for the entirety.
Okay,
But
got
we-
it.
Yeah.
All right, so what I'm looking at is, as a citizen, I get to vote on this RFA once, and if we vote it in, if it gets voted in, it's gonna be very sticky and nearly impossible to ever extract ourselves out of it if we wanted to. It'd be really difficult, I'm gonna say. I'm guessing.
I don't know the exact process, but it would be the same as if you wanted to pull out of a school district or whatever. I mean, it's possible.
So from my point of view, like, this is an important decision that I'm making now that's probably gonna stick, I'm guessing.
It's,
mean,
yeah,
most
it's
likely.
definitely, if voters vote for it or against it, I mean, it would impact
Right.
the entire area for
long time.
theoretically generations to come.
So what I'm trying to get past is, like, this is a big decision.
Yes.
And what you're telling me is that there's plans that we could end up with a fully staffed fire department at some point in time, like Aberdeen has, which to me would be preferable. But there's no like guarantee of it. So I'm taking a risk now of putting my vote into this RFA, not knowing whether my eventual Kazi life is going to include a fully staffed fire department. So I'm thinking out into the future, but I'm not getting any sort of assurance that our future is going to be taken care of in a manner in which I deem appropriate. So it's difficult for me to make a decision. I would like to see a fully staffed, a staffed fire department here in Kazi for our city if we're
I am
gonna
with
be
you
a city.
100%. I live in Cosmopolis. I would love to see that too.
Yeah, so
However, Aberdeen, Hopeland, Cosmopolis, Central Park, Grace Harbor in general is not a very rich county. And I think all of us. would
understand it.
to
It's
agree
got
with
a
that.
lot richer, but we're not
But we're
comparatively
not. I
rich
mean,
to Bellevue and things like that.
One of the things that Dave and I'm going off on a tangent, and I apologize, and tell me to shut up if you want me to, but one of the things Dave and I are hoping with this RFA is that it helps with our recruitment and retention. I have 21 firefighters. Of those 21, 11 of them have been in my department for less than 5 years. 15 of them have been in my department less than 8. I have a very, very young department. one of the major reasons I lose people is because they can come work for me for 2 years. They can become a firefighter 1, they can get a firefighter 2. I can get them certificates, they can get all sorts of experience. And then they can go to, for example, Central Pierce Fire and Rescue in Pierce County. And they can make $10,000 to $30,000 a year more and literally run half as many calls as they have to in Hope. And it's just this turnover, it's this constant turnover, and I'm always losing people. David's constantly losing people. And we can't compete with the wages and the workload. In the first round of the RFA, when it was just Aberdeen and Hope, we ran statistics from across the state. Excuse me, and we picked varieties of different sizes of fire departments, everything from Tacoma that has 500-600 firefighters, to Olympia that has like 200, to Chelan County at 5 or whatever, it has like 10, right? And we averaged out the call volume to the number of firefighters. And Hope Wind was leading the state with like 170 calls per firefighter per year. Aberdeen was like 168 calls per firefighter per year, right behind there. You go to Central Pierce again, you can make $30,000 a month more and run maybe 80 calls per firefighter per year. So you're literally working half the amount of calls and you're making 30,000. And we can't compete with that. But we're hoping with the RFA that there becomes more opportunity. It becomes a bigger system. Volunteers come through the system. We can train them locally, young kids that we hope can build up a program. I'm not sure if you're familiar, but Montesano High School and the Montesano Fire Department have a program. And 6 of their employees right now, I think, work for the city of Montesano Fire Department. It's an excellent program and we would love to try to do that. This would be our caveat. This would be our avenue to do that.
How is that gonna help retention though?
By providing a bigger, hopefully more financially stable, that has more opportunities for
More money for the fire department, right?
I'm
More
sorry?
money for the firefighters is what they need in order to be incented.
and that's where that extra cost comes in of what we were talking about with the taxes and everything.
But if we could train the local volunteers through the training program that comes out of here, the hope would be that we would get Jimmy and Sally who live down the block that want to train locally and then work locally, and that would be the hope, but
What I'm going with your issue on retention, wouldn't it help retention if you were able to get folks that grew up here, lived here, have roots here,
That's what
and hence
yeah.
the value of the volunteer growth?
Enhance the attractiveness of the department as a whole. Yeah, and that's just one of the many things why we are trying to do this, right? And I live in Causey. I understand everybody's issues that are here tonight, and I don't want to have to pay more money, but it's also my job, so I realize sometimes we have to. So I'm just trying to give you multiple reasons, and I hope I answered your question. I trying to get more services and all these other, I hope I answered some of that. I hope.
Information to take in.
Yeah.
It is.
Financials to look at, and this feels like a very important decision that's gonna be made one time. And so I feel a little bit,
We'll have one,
we don't have enough time to really look at the numbers before you
maybe
guys
3
are gonna
months.
vote.
You'll have 3 months to get the numbers. We'll have a lot of these workshops. We'll have a lot of this information.
And the next council member-
So at the next council meeting, we would vote on the plan. The plan then goes to the elections office in February. Then it would be 3 months until the April election. For this is how much it would cost you. You could actually, people could reach out and actually get the exact, okay, my house is worth this much. What would it be? Those types of things. That's where we're at right now, is still in the planning process, but there would be a long time. We will have multiple public meetings in all 3 cities to discuss this information online and everything, so that the voters are as informed as possible, but it's a lot of information. Your comment about, like, we would love to have the fully staffed department here, and again, like you said, it's based on kind of calls. I pulled up just the numbers that I had. This is from October, but just a rough estimate on like the call volumes wherever. So Aberdeen had in October 435 calls out for the fire department. Hoquiam had 213, yeah, it's 90% EMS. 213 for Hoquiam, 22 for Cosmopolis. So staffing would be distributed as, like, if they're all of a sudden South Aberdeen became like the hub of the call volume, there would be more firefighters and EMS and paramedics and things going to be on South Aberdeen more or over here. So it's based right now on where the call volume is to how distance and things. So it's not as if we could take a full one of the staff that's already in Aberdeen and just move them over here, because then they would 90% of the time be traveling from here over to the other side, 2 blocks away from the station or wherever. So it's not a.
Dynamic to look at it like that, because I feel like I'm somewhat punished for living in Cosmopolis because there's not a whole ton of people here, so there's not a whole ton of calls to the fire department. Because it's really like a numbers game type of thing. And so if we had a larger population in Causey, we would have more calls out and we would have more fire department. But if the numbers stay low because we have a low population in the scenario, we may never see a fully staffed normal fire department in Causey because our call volume isn't high enough to ever justify it on paper.
I mean, realistically, if the residents and the council and stuff we want a fully staffed, full-time department here, all it takes is lots of money. That we could quadruple the EMS fees and the fire availability, and we could massively add all these, if that's what people want, this is what they want, we could do that. As it sits, it doesn't make a huge sense.
Next question was, if the RFA doesn't pass, what's the contingency plan for Causey?
Same that we would continue to try to add volunteers, and we would look at what other options we have. We want to make sure the residents here are not losing that coverage, but we would have to look at everything we can. We got a ton of applications for volunteers just over the last couple of weeks and kind of vetting through those, but yeah, it's the growth that we do not charge that much because we are smaller and we don't have as much tax base. But if we want the full meal deal service, it costs more. So we have to look at different options. Right now, the only one that has really even been looked at is we're maintaining, bringing in volunteers and maintaining that department as we have. And then also looking at this option, but we're not gonna go and say, okay, we've got 5 different options, pick which one is, you feel like. We're gonna look at this. If the RFA, if the voters say, no, we don't want that, we'll talk to the voters. Why did we not want this? What was the concerns? And then we'll look at what other steps are possible. But we're not throwing out a grab bag of options right now until we look at this one. Does that make sense?
So it doesn't make sense to me that we wouldn't be looking or putting numbers on paper of what it would cost us to have a real fire department here in Causey so that we can have. apples to apples conversation.
Way more than it would cost to join the RFA. Far more.
It would cost to join the RFA, and I don't know then how much way more is. So it's like, without looking at numbers in front of me, there's no way for me to form an opinion about really any of it.
So we should get the numbers, like I said, next week.
This is just a ballpark figure for you. This is not anything official, and I'm no mathematician, but just based off of knowing my budget, knowing a little bit Matt's budget, and another small department's budget that I kind of freelance help out with a little bit right now. If you want 2 guys, you want 3 guys for shift.
I
If
have
you
no
want 2,
idea
you got
what-
to have 3. Because they gotta give them vacation and they have to have time off because of labor standards. So you're looking 3 bodies for 3 shifts. Plus you're gonna need a chief. You're looking at a budget of probably $6 to $7 million a year to operate a paid fire department with that many people. That might be right.
Volunteer what?
Part-
What about a
We're running about.
I don't know, where to answer your question, she's asking what this.
So, I mean, compared to roughly 250,000. So, I mean. It's possible, but it would go from the cost of $18 a month to. If people want, if people want to pay $100 a month to have full-time on-call, like, I mean, that's a very rough, that's not like, but. It's possible, but we've tried to, and with volunteers for as long as we have and everything, to keep it as low as possible, and that's still the. Full goal. Did you have something, Jim? Sorry.
Yeah, everybody in here, I kind of asked for this meeting back a few months ago. And I assumed, I didn't know until last night that the financial side of this thing was not done yet. So to everybody in the audience, I would ask that you come for the financial side, come to the meeting next Thursday, the 12th.
Tuesdays. Next Thursday?
Next Thursday.
Next Thursday. They are,
Oh, yeah,
where
thank
the numbers will be there. I apologize. I thought the numbers were gonna be done. So we could have it all hashed out in one meeting, but tonight, I guess, is the nuts and bolts of the thing, and then find out. I plan on coming, because I don't have any idea what it's gonna cost.
For Jim and Linda Stringer, I appreciate more information being put out about this meeting tonight. I'm usually, if I'm not at a council meeting, I'm always on Zoom. And there was a comment made by Kyle that you kind of mentioned it in the council meeting. You said it's kind of dry stuff. It may seem dry to you. However, I think it's important information and the citizens want to hear it. Regardless if it's number, statistic, these gentlemen have provided a lot of really good information. I think some of the key points was, if we continue like we are, and you have to call out, your station is busy, your station is busy, and we have an aging, we have lots of new citizens, younger families moving in, but we also have half and half. Well, we have an aging population. And someone's going to lose a life. There's going to be a critical incident with someone, because that's the kind of system we have right now. I know that Miles and Stonna and these gentlemen have been working hard, recruiting, and personally, and I said this before, and I have good friends that don't agree with me. I support the RFA. I really think it's unrealistic for a city this size to think that we can have our own fire department. The cost is unrealistic. It's not what we had. Unfortunately, it's not. And I won't go down that road because I'm not happy like the rest of the citizens in here with what happened. But this is where we're at. And for me personally, I support this. And I think you provided a very solid scenario where we're at. And it's pretty much in a crisis mode if something doesn't happen here soon.
Did you have something come?
I'm hearing two things, so can you just clarify? So my understanding is the RFA becomes official January 1, 2024, and that's when the tax base starts. But it's official after the election, when the election results are certified, and then they'll start to respond as an RFA, or the response will be as it is now, or will it slowly start to develop and then come online?
So so as far as when RFA is the RFA, so. If it passes in April, we'll just go with that. So if it passes in April, as the plan is written, the RFA would become in existence January 1 of 24. So that's when the RFA becomes. In the meantime, if this does pass, we've had conversations about, we don't want to wait till January 1 and say, what are we going to do? And how it's New Year's Day and who's taking that call? We're going to start as soon as we know that this is passing on the operational plan and the like. This is something we did with when we went through this process, just us. We actually built a policy manual that we could throw on the table on day one that we were ready to go, and started looking at our response models leading up to it. And it never happened, so we didn't have to throw the book out, but we've used some of those response models. We'd be doing the same thing here. We would be setting ourselves up to be ready to go even before that day hits. And you would probably see some enhancements even before.
you'd probably start seeing a Hopeland ambulance showing up more often. I got a text from somebody here a couple of weeks ago, why is Hopeland in my city? Because we're awesome, that's why. But you would start seeing some operations of us trying to figure out if this works, does this not work? And sometimes anybody here that does anything with a business, sometimes you gotta take a chance and try this, and oh, that didn't work. Going back to
Yeah,
plan B.
best laid plans. Yeah.
Right, so you probably see some. You would see an improved service, but you would see some weird things, again. A Hoquiam ambulance in Cosmopolis, why are they here? Well, we had too many calls and so they showed up. And we start to slow roll those to fine tune everything. And even on January 1st of 2024, I can guarantee you it's not gonna be perfect. Because today, I mean, Hoquiam Fire's been in fire departments for since 1890. I can't do the math real quick. A long time. Things have changed and they're constantly changing. So we're constantly upgrading and changing our response and everything. So it's just something new happens. There's a new rule, a new law, this happens, and we have to adjust everything. So you would see an improved service April 3rd. But that's us trying to make the end result better. I don't know if that.
It's a, I have one more question.
Yeah.
So if I understand, then there'll be commissioners, fire commissioners. So the RFA is set in place, and then that's the importance of electing good fire commissioners to determine what's this look like in 2 years here, what's it look like here, and that is where the nuts and the bolts of it come together, is when that counts.
Yeah, very good point is the RFA, and I'd like to say that it's only going to be as successful as complete. So, getting good people in those elected positions to drive the bus is going to be very important, especially in the early years of it. Because there is, as Matt said, there's going to be growing pains. We don't know what we don't know on something. And I don't want to say we have all the answers. And those commissioners down the road are going to be looking at exactly your concern. How can we add staffing here? Can we do that? Or, how do we need to allocate our resources to fit the needs of the population the best with what we have? So, and that's going to be on them. We could come up with the grandiose plan of a lifetime, and they can come in, as far as the operational mode, how it's really going to work. And they can come in and say, no, we want you to do it this way. So, getting good forward thinking commissioners in there that work well with your administrative staff is going to be.
Advancing. I hear that some people believe that volunteers from Cosmopolis are an advantage over the RFA. The CRFA. A question for the Aberdeen fire representative.
Yeah.
Can you compare the response time from the South Aberdeen Fire Station, if they aren't on another call, for them to get with their bodies and their equipment to a call in Cosmopolis versus volunteers from Cosmopolis, if we had them and they're fully trained, getting from their homes to the station, their bodies and equipment getting to the site?
Yeah. So I'll give you two versions of that. One is a call that we had just a few days ago. It was a car fire. Maybe it was a pickup, if I remember right.
Yep.
It was here in town. My Southside engine got here in 4 minutes. 4 minutes. So that's kind of a hard number example of something that happened recently. Now going on just experience, being somebody on the floor working out of the Southside station, and knowing, just listening to the radio even back at the station of when calls are going on, is our medic unit very often gets on scene down here at the same time, if not maybe before or right after. I mean, very close of when the volunteer crews are showing up with the aid unit. So, the response time is very similar. But we're coming from that farther distance.
Do they have EMTs, the volunteers?
There's, well, yes and no. No. It fluctuates. And I don't have the numbers of how many EMTs
Two.
the department have, they do now, as of right now, we have right now. Beforehand, I think there was 2 or 3, but that would fluctuate. So,
I could add a little bit to him. We had 2 calls last night and I responded from home. One getting out of bed, getting dressed, getting my gear, coming down here, driving safe, not speeding. And got on the engine and I was 4 minutes behind the medic unit on scene. Those were 2 calls last night, so the call times are recent. And so if we're here at the station, that's a different story, but responding from home as a volunteer, driving normal, safe, getting to the station appropriately, I was 4 minutes behind.
Nick, what were your response rates for November and December that you told us the other night?
So for how many responses the volunteers had?
Yeah, how many-
Right.
yes.
We got 30% November call volume, 50% of December's call volume. So those are in the 2 months that we've been operating. So it's averaging for Mark and I, 10 minutes from the dispatch time to the en route time. And that's making sure that we're doing things safe, getting down to the station and go. So we're meeting and averaging on things. And I would like to, challenge Chief Golding, the response time from your south side station, to the city of Cosmopolis, you're saying 4 minutes for the car fire the other night. What would your average call time be? 10 minutes, right in there?
overall for the city itself.
Yeah.
My average call time, I have not ran the report for this year yet because well, extended.
Yeah.
But I run somewhere in the neighborhood of 7 to 8.
So then what is your average call volume around the college, the opposite side of it? South
I
Aberdeen.
actually have that.
So what I'm hearing with the RFA is we're not maintaining a volunteer fire department in Cosmopolis. We're enhancing our volunteer fire department to a combination. Because we're getting career staff as well, that, yeah, as long as we have volunteers from the station, we're getting a better coverage than the people in South Aberdeen next to the college. It's the same response time for that south side fire station, and you have more bodies in the city. And Chief Golding, I'd also curious what the call volume comparison is for that zone of South Aberdeen versus the city of Cosmopolis.
So South Aberdeen, figure 2,100 calls.
Okay.
Just South Aberdeen itself. I actually have just the number for the whole zone. I didn't have it broken out. But looking at, when I look at my heat map and call maps, you're about 2/3 of those calls are on that side of the Boone Street to south side. And then I don't recall, you mentioned the number of runs, we were a couple hundred.
We hit 250 last year.
Okay, yeah. So yeah, we're 250 here.
Yeah.
2/3 of 2,100 on that side, and again, the whole south side being 2,100, so.
So I look at as a resident of Cosmopolis, that having volunteers here and the south side station responding in the RFA model. There's no better response that I see. And that's my personal thing.
Versus what we have now.
Versus what we have now. Right now, it's not sustainable. We're, like you said earlier, we're in crisis mode right now, paying averaging for this time. Keep in mind also that Cosmopolis has never had paramedics. No, Aberdeen has been the paramedic service for Cosmopolis for as long as I can, forever. I know there's been volunteers that were medics, but they weren't a transporting agency. I don't think you guys have ever been a transporting agency. BLS. You could BLS transport, okay. So not an ALS transporting agency. I know there was medics that were volunteers here, but Aberdeen's always been your medic system. With that, if Causey were to back out, the RFA is gonna go away. And Aberdeen and Hokum are gonna have to spend another year or so trying to rebuild it and see if it even works. With that being said, if the RFA gets formed or not, it's either gonna be RFA medics that are coming here or Aberdeen medics that are still providing that service. somehow the residents or the city, and I'm gonna separate the two, have to pay for that. Cause it costs money. But I mean, let's be honest, everybody knows it. It's not a cheap thing. Volunteers aren't free, let's be honest. I mean, it costs $1,200 plus. No, it's what's it cost to outfit a person now? I'm paying about $5,000.
yeah,
but
yeah,
usually, yeah,
yeah.
I don't know. It's $5,000 to put bunker gear on somebody. I sent one of my guys, or we both sent somebody to the Thurston County Fire Academy last year. It was $2,000. Just to send them, so they become firefighter 1 certified. And get their hazmat. I don't know what it costs for EMT class nowadays.
Nothing more. That's perfect.
We'll see. They always say it's not gonna cost. But it'll cost.
It's costing me.
Yeah, right. And then there's usually some sort of points or reimbursement system or pay system. Different places have different ways of compensating the volunteers. It's not free. They may not get a $10,000 check at the end of the year, but still, it's not free. So it still costs money one way or the other. And we're still gonna have to pay for the medics to respond to our house and or transport them. So I just want to make sure everybody understood that.
Think you have something to say?
I did, Steve Davis. Some of you don't know me. I've been around for a while. I was an EMT instructor when Chief Golding started his career at 17. So I've been here a bit, few years ago. I've always been pro RFA. I think it's a good mix. The issue is that it's expensive. The best scenario would be Causey having a very robust volunteer station. A very robust volunteer station like we used to have. It's been a while. And an RFA with senior management to be able to help manage the training and all the aspects of the volunteers. It's good for Gray's Heart. It's good for Arctic. It's good for all the outlying communities. It's expensive. And the questions that you really have to raise is all the numbers, and we've heard, call volumes, response times. Yeah, it's a misnomer. Because, we get certain calls, we would leave our home and go directly to the call with a bag, with our equipment prepared as an EMT IV techs, trained. We'd leave our home, we'd go there knowing that other guys are gonna come down and get other equipment and meet us there. So, sometimes response times could be, 30 seconds, a minute. We get good service from that. Good service, great service. But their call volume has gone up so much that I've been here waiting for Ocean Shores. That's who was coming to help us. Because Aberdeen was busy, Hope was busy, Westport couldn't come, District 2 couldn't come, and so we had Ocean Shores on their way. When finally Hope broke loose and they were able to come help. Okay. Grace Harbor in general, our EMS system is on the verge of collapse. It really is. And it's on the verge of collapse for many reasons. For dispatching, our 911 dispatch center right now is an extremely low point. So we're not talking about just funding an RFA. We're talking about refunding our whole system. I don't know if you got your power bill yet this month or your water bill yet this month, but it's all going up. It's about building a culture, a real culture of what we're going to do to solve this problem. The benefit of the RFA is we can have some resource people to get back into our community schools. When you're 10 years old and you get trained by a first aid class or whatever, when you get fire department personnel coming into your school, You pick up a few kids who want to be firefighters. You know? Our culture's changed in this town. We had a banner up here that, for many years, that, Al Burrows' son, who's now a paramedic in Tacoma, signed, you know, their sixth grade class or whatever it was. So we have a lot of history in Cosmopolis. We have a lot of culture in Cosmopolis. A lot of us took time from our jobs and our lives to go to the school a couple of times a year, have the school kids come down here a couple of times a year to play with trucks and spray some water and get familiar, so that they didn't have fear, so that they would become engaged, so that their parents would come and get engaged in our department. We lost that. It's gonna take us a while to get that back. The RFA is a huge decision. The one question I have is, I'm gonna just, I have many, but I'm gonna say two things. Right now, $1.50 per thousand. Let's say the city collects $1.50 per thousand right now on our property taxes. Okay. The RFA becomes its own municipal corporation, almost like its own city. Correct? Is that correct?
They would be a junior taxing authority, I think.
It's its own taxing
So it would be,
Purpose district.
So it becomes its own taxing authority. The city still holds that taxing authority. So we pay $1.50 per thousand to the RFA. And all it takes is an act from the council to ask for that $1.50 for the city.
no, we can't, there's only,
Okay, so
So
here's.
they would
speaking with the
take.
county Assessor's office, they said exactly that. And there should be some verbiage in your contract, in your plan, that says you can't do both.
That's state law, we
Okay,
can't do that.
so $1.50 per thousand. That's fire department. Then you have the ambulance availability fee, which is maybe $46 a month. So we're talking
You say 40-60?
$46 a month,
That's not a number I've heard.
Darren?
I haven't heard that much, but I've heard all sorts of numbers from
Okay,
Yeah.
so
20 to 40.
So the RFA, the property taxes X, they're gonna have an availability fee of what? We don't know. Maybe Thursday we'll have that information. I know that.
We should, that's
Yeah,
a-
we should, so we should have that information. So just based on those numbers, you know, how many utility hookups do we have in the city?
753.
Do your own math. It's a lot of money. It's a lot of money. And what are we really gonna get for that? We need in Cosmopolis to maintain we need to get our culture back. And we have to have a robust volunteer fire department. That's the best thing we could put into the RFA. Our tax money, the finance director from Hopeland said, you guys don't bring very much to the table compared to Aberdeen and Hopeland, dollar-wise. And she's right, you know, we don't. We're just a little piece of this pie. Having volunteers, is that gonna keep us from having to have the RFA? I don't know. You know, having a culture of people that live in our community and stay here. Aberdeen hired 2 people recently that live in Skagit County. Actually, 3 of them. Okay, are they gonna come, in? Big structure fire, you're gonna call them in? What are you gonna do? We want local people here. So we need to create this RFA. But at the same breath, it needs to be financially and fiscally responsible. And honestly, we haven't seen that from our cities recently. In the past few years. Numbers get thrown out there and how much is this and how much is that? We don't really know. So. I'm pro RFA. I question administration. It's about boots on the street. You said EMT classes are free. We just recently signed a contract with Grace Harbor EMS for $5,800 a year.
You got out cheap. Yeah.
Right? City of Causey, $5,800.
Yeah.
That's not free. It used to be included in the transit tax. That transit tax should be repealed.
It is, it was illegal, that's why we have to pay it. The fund-
It worked a long time. It got changed. There's a different culture.
It's not a different culture. It's, state said we couldn't do that.
Yeah, every other EMS department
It's not
has changed decades, yeah.
So what happened is, when the impact, when the transit tax, the penny of transit tax money was out there, it was sold on the backs of EMS. This is gonna help fund EMS. That's what it was. And anybody that voted on it knows. So when it became, well, we can't do that anymore, that penny should have been repealed.
That's a.
That should have been repealed, and then you give transit what they need, and the EMS should have got what they need. But we don't work that way.
You can't fund
That's why-
the
you
EMS
know
that
what?
way, that's the
So
whole.
that's my point. We can talk in circles all night. What needs to happen is we need to decide as a community, what kind of culture do we want to have? How are we gonna keep EMS? It doesn't really matter. It's not a big issue until your family member is down. You know? Till your neighbor's truck's on fire. That's what matters. So. Well, I'm at a loss. I don't trust the administration that's gonna work this thing out. And I have a problem with that. I'm trying to. But it comes to this. Yeah, well, next Thursday, we'll see what's available. Is the $46 or is the EMS availability fee, is it equitable? Does she pay the same amount as me? Do I pay the same amount as somebody else? Is it equitable? That's my first question. And then the second question is it reasonable? Do we need that much money in there? The RFA went out there twice in Aberdeen and Hokum, correct? Failed both times, had to have a super majority, 60%, didn't make 60%. The new one is 50%.
That's up under, we're gonna look into that more, because depending on,
Depending on how the plan is finalized.
when the plan is finalized, we have to pick a couple options, but
So
it could change, it could be 60%.
so it could be a super majority or it could be a simple majority. So we all need to get back here next Thursday and see what numbers we get from the authority at the time and whether it makes sense. But at the same time, we need to develop a culture here in Cosmopolis that we give a shit about our neighbors. And we don't make judgment based on hearsay and other things. I personally put my application in quite a while ago to get back from the fire department. Quite a while ago, heard nothing. Recently, a bunch of people, former members, put their applications back in. To get back in the fire department. Because we want to bolster this. In case the RFA doesn't pass. We want to bolster it. So we can bring our knowledge and experience back to the department. We want to bolster it because we live here. We give a shit about our neighbors.
Steve, do we have a question? It's been about 5 to 8 minutes.
Yeah, the question is, what are we gonna do? My application was denied.
Well, that has nothing to do with the RFA, and that's,
It's about that culture. What
it's,
kind of
but
culture
it's,
do you
we're
want?
here to talk about the I understand what, I mean, I know that you put in your application and as well as a bunch of other people, but anybody who does get through the volunteer process and the background and the health and all that things, they will get pulled into the RFA if they come in. So thank you for your application, I guess. But yeah, I mean, we want to keep this on RFA. Yeah, like,
Yeah.
I don't know what the question is. I don't know what that means.
You know what, Steve? I'll answer that. What kind of culture we have? We are building a culture right now. 2 of them are sitting here right now, Steve.
Yeah.
And this has to stop. You are publicly attacking Aberdeen administration, Hopeway administration, Cosmopolis administration, city council administration, and your Cosmopolis administration. They're here. And they're here to answer questions about this, Steve. And this is not here for personal attack time. This is for us to answer questions. And you're telling them to their face that you don't trust them and that you don't trust them. That's great. Thanks for letting us know about your trust, but we are here for the citizens to answer questions. Please ask a question and listen to the answer.
Okay, how much is the aggregate availability fee gonna be per utility hookup?
We don't know until it's
No.
finalized.
And the reason your application wasn't addressed before, you were told to bring a driver's abstract in.
No.
Yes, yes,
Nobody ever called, nobody ever
yes.
contacted.
Then you've been gone for what, last couple months? So how are we gonna bring you on?
How long are you gonna stay?
Can we
Let-
direct
let-
this back?
So that-
Yeah, so as far as we're gonna take a jump off. We can talk about volunteer applications and things outside of this, but RFA questions, as we can answer.
So to address the funding, if currently Aberdeen, Hopeland, Cosmopolis, every citizen pays $1.50 per thousand to the respective city that goes to fund that individual city's fire department. With the RFA, that gets taken away from the city. And the RFA was then collected. The city of Hoquiam has a 50 cents per thousand EMS levy. Aberdeen and Cosmopolis do not. That would be incorporated into the funding mechanism. To answer your question, where that next number comes from is you take the operational expenses, so what's your budget? What'd you say your budget on? Together, all together.
Altogether, I'm at 8.3.
And I'm at $6 million.
14.
Thank you.
15.
I went to Hopeland for my
Yeah.
math.
So you say 15.
Let's say 15 million to operate that. You take the assessed valuation of Aberdeen, Hopeland, Cosmopolis, take the $1.50 and the 50 cents, and it equals whatever that number is. That residual needs to be made up by the ambulance utility fee or availability fee. That's where that number comes from. And those numbers only came out from the county.
Just within the last couple of weeks or so,
Couple of
right before
weeks.
Christmas, we got the
One of the
finalized
reasons why we don't have those
valuation.
numbers is because the county says, Cosmopolis, this is your assessed valuation of, I don't know,
No, it's not.
4 million or 400 million or whatever, I have no idea. That's where those monies come from, and that's how we designate what the price is going to be. So that's one of the reasons we don't have that ambulance availability fee. We should have that because the county has released most of the numbers, if not all of them.
They
I'm
have
not a
those.
numbers person, obviously, like you can tell, my math is not top notch. I'll do quick stuff, but Julie knows that that stuff comes out, we have to wait for it, and that's where it's gonna go. To address your culture issue, you're right. It's not just Cosmopolis, it is across the board. You heard Dave say. He's got 3 people from Skagit County. Out of my 21 people, 6 of them live Olympia North. I can't hire local people. I don't get applications. I have got a standing, I think Dave does well, lateral firefighter paramedic application open right now. I have 1 position. Dave has 3, 4. How many applicants have you got for medics? I got 0. That's what we're dealing with down here. That's again, going back to what I said earlier about trying to become one bigger one and attract, recruit, retention. This is what I'm dealing with. The culture across the fire service has changed. I can't get people to come in and go to schools anymore. I have a select few. I'm paying them overtime to do it. Same thing with Dave. You still have the diehards, you have the locals that remember when they went to McDermott and the fire department came in, or they went to Lincoln School in Hopeland. Or like my kids, I mean, my kids' pictures were up in this department because they all went to the fire station when they were little. That's society in general, and that is something we're fighting hard. It's, look at Grace Harbor Fire District 17, Pump Tulips. Anybody guess how many volunteers they have right now?
4.
How many?
4.
No,
Probably the 3 commissioners.
1.
Yeah.
1. And he only responds to fire. He doesn't respond to EMS. Guess who gets to cover those calls? Oakland. Grace Harbor Fire District 16, how many volunteers? 9. Grace Harbor Fire District 7 covers them, except Hopeland is their paramedics and their ALS and their transport service.
Ocean Shores is very robust.
Orson Shores is having their own problems out there, but they're at the end of the world. We don't, they're way out there. We don't. I'm just kidding. I'm kidding. I will tell you, last year, we got called by Ocean Shores something like 19 or 20 times to go help them. Because their transport times are so far away. Steve also brought up Grace Harbor 911. They are now down to 7 dispatchers. They're supposed to have 20. They can't even hire people to come in. Anybody here want a job or know somebody who wants? Go up there and apply. As long as you don't have a felony record, they're gonna hire you. They are hurting for people. Dave and I are hurting. All the other fire departments are hurting. I mean, Ocean Shores is begging for people out there. So it's not just a Cosby thing, Steve. It's a national thing, and Grace Harbor is getting hit with it hard right now. And one of the things that Dave and I have been trying to push, and Chief Hubbard, who was the previous Aberdeen chief that retired back in June, was pushing for the RFA to build that culture and to build that back up where maybe we can get local kids that want to come back in and want to stay local instead of moving away. I've tried to get both my kids to volunteer here, but they have better things to do, right? So it's hard. It's nationwide, statewide, specifically countywide. And the whole county is hurting on many aspects. The EMS system in the county is failing. The hospital is failing. I don't know how many times we go up there and we call and say, hey, I'm on my way with a heart attack. Sorry, we're full. Can you go somewhere else? Nope, I'm coming to you anyway. But 5 to 6 times a month, Oakland goes to Elma. Because that's the next closest hospital, trying to give community a break. The system is bad. Again, like I said earlier, Grace Harbor is not a rich county. And that is coming to the head with the 911 center. Nobody wants to work down here. Fire departments, nobody wants to volunteer or work. The hospital, they just recently got their staff up-ish.
Mostly travelers. But it's
all pretty much who are not local. They just come here because they get paid more per hour. And then they go back home in different states, different next destination, right? They just keep moving around.
A lot of them are driving from Swim all the way down 12 hours and driving up.
There you go, right? So it's the culture thing is huge and we would love to get it back, and part of becoming a combination department with the RFA, we hope would help with that. Build up the volunteer ranks, build up the paid ranks as time goes on. Yes, ma'am.
Within the RFA, then, is there sort of funding to provide like marketing communication services to the RFA to develop this culture that you want and to drive awareness about it to?
There's nothing specifically, we don't have a line item budget set up.
It seems like part of this acquiring new employees could be tied to like a marketing problem, honestly.
100%.
It's, well, there's several different things that go into that, but we have, okay. I finally embraced Facebook as a part of it.
Me too.
We lasted 2 weeks before we got put in for Facebook jail for some reason. I can't get paroled. I don't know what happened.
I mean, I think
So, but
that's a big problem in Grace.
that
Harbor,
outreach
is that there's
is-
not
Yeah.
that outreach from within to drive the awareness that's needed for people to want to be excited about working for the
And
whole.
we have tried, like I said, the Montesano High School, Montesano Fire Department, we've got this program where you can take a high school skills level class, kind of like Aberdeen does with construction and radio and auto mechanic, all that. And they've got a bunch of their local kids who are doing that. We would love to start something like that. But it takes time and manpower,
So
and
actually,
everything
just to
else.
speak on that, I actually have a meeting with the school district here within the next 2 weeks. And she wants to talk to me about that exact concept.
Which I think is a great, I think
How
that's a
can we
great
make
plan. I love that plan, but you need people who are ready to be firefighters right now.
You're right.
So how do you reach those firefighters right now? Like I look online at Facebooks and social media. I'm a marketing professional by trade in the technology sector. So like, there's things that you, that.
Want to volunteer?
Yeah.
Services.
Potentially, I would be willing to do that, but I alone in a little bit of volunteer time, I'm not gonna be able to drive the awareness that you need, but I'm saying like, does the RFA plan have like, and I'm not looking for a job, I have a good job. But is there a plan for this RFA to have some sort of a person that's like this community builder, this culture
So-
builder, this recruiter?
I
type
have a
person?
position that we've had on for our department, we call it fire service specialist. We've had for a couple of years. And this is a person, it's one of our firefighters that works during the day. And that right there is one of his things. And I blame him for us being in Facebook jail because he's running. But he pushes out information and tries to do the outreach. Amongst all the other. But we do have a person who that is somewhat earmarked to do, so.
But the
we've
challenge
spoken
with
to
that
them.
is that you take a firefighter and you put him in front of Facebook and ask him to create a marketing plan that's gonna drive awareness and drive retention for the fire department and help get more firefighters. And that person is like, what did you just say?
So.
You know, like, they don't have the expertise
You're right.
This
or the
person-
background or the
this
knowledge.
person Has gone to classes for that sort of
Okay.
thing. So it's a
Alright.
slow process, you know, because you can't learn it all in a week in Chelan. But after, you know, a few conferences we get him to, I see a difference in what he's putting out now versus what he did 6 months ago. So for us, we're trying to get.
And to expand on what you were saying is, and it was mentioned earlier, is part of the RFA plan, all 3 cities will be providing a service to the RFA until such time the RFA can take over on their own. An example is the city of Hokum finance director is going to run the finances for the RFA. That just, and the city of Hokum mechanic was going to be the fleet maintenance person. City of Aberdeen is gonna take over human resources. Kazi was gonna take over the volunteer resources and all the stuff that has to go along with that, because they're familiar with it. The exchange there was going to be on the flip side, that now the RFA is going to provide fire marshal services to all 3 cities. So plan review, plan inspection, business inspections,
Fire code enforcement.
fire code enforcement, anything associated with fire marshal, right? That was a give back. Obviously, 911 services, obviously. Public education, as you were talking, getting our crews back out into the schools for public education. Fire extinguisher classes. We go out and we give fire extinguisher classes to mainly businesses, but you know, if a group of people wanted it, we would do that as well. So there's gonna be, because there's not a lot of money coming in that beginning, or honestly, for 6 months, like no money. Right? There's literally no money in the RFA. The cities are supplementing and helping that. On the flip side, the RFA is trying to give back the other resources that it can do. So there's not a lot of wiggle room in the budget. You bring up an excellent point. And we've talked about that as 3 individual departments. There's just no play in the budget. I mean, honestly, my finance director yelled at me when all of a sudden my numbers start turning red in October. She's like, what are you doing with that? Operating as I normally do. I'm sorry, but they're turning red. Sorry.
One thing I do want to say, it's like 7:45, so I don't want to keep everybody here too long. So I want to just kind of keep things moving. So just let people know that there is.
If I could really, I just want to add
Right.
one thing that's really quick is, another benefit. So, you know, we're talking about, is it gonna cost more of that? But even though there's that, we're looking at being financially responsible and being able to streamline things financially. And I like to use a perfect example of fire trucks. Do we need this many fire trucks? You know, he's got a reserve, I've got a reserve. You 3 rigs out here? Yeah, we need all, so in essence, 4 reserve fire trucks. Do we need that many? maybe we can get rid of one. Every vehicle we get rid of, that's no insurance, no maintenance, no operating costs. None of that sort of stuff. So there's an opportunity to save money. Being able to buy supplies maybe in bulk. I call it the Costco discount. Because we're using more of it as an entity. Right now, he's buying the same supplies I'm buying. If we're buying them together, we might get a better rate because of the quantity of buy. So there's opportunities there for savings to help offset. We're not just going to be business. Put it that way. I just want to make that. And then
Yeah.
Okay, so, getting back kind of the funding mechanism of it all. So I understand that, we're gonna have a certain valuation based on our property, then an ambulance availability fee. Does all three cities pay the same on the property thing, but they have a difference on the ambulance one?
They're
all-
it would be
So
the
even
same.
though you have one town that requires more resources than another town, but we all.
So it's just like now where it's every person would pay for the same resources, so the same availability, whether or not you call the 911 or whatever. There's more people, there's more calls, obviously, but everybody pays for the same availability cost.
So my same house, if I were to uproot the whole thing and put it in Aberdeen or Hope, it'd be the same amount of money.
Yes.
Yeah.
Both in terms of ambulance ability and the taxation.
Yeah.
So if you owned $100,000 home here and $100,000 home here, you're paying.
Okay.
Whatever that math is.
we cannot legally have different rate structures for different areas.
Oh, okay.
It has to be the same.
It's all the same fair.
And something to keep in mind, and now, I know there's multiple hands up, I'm sorry, but it will no longer be the Oakland Fire Department, the Aberdeen Fire Department, the Cosmopolis Fire Department. It'll be the Central Grace Harbor Regional Fire Authority with a Oakland station and Aberdeen's, 2 Oakland stations, 2 Aberdeen stations, and a Cosmopolis station. So it's not the Causey volunteers anymore, it's the Fire Authority volunteers, it's not the Hopeland Fire Department over here, it is the Central Grace Harbor Regional Fire Authority, Hopeland Station 1 or 2 or whatever we name it, right?
So instead of paying basically for the 250 calls, you're paying the cumulative Oakland, cumulative Aberdeen.
Right.
Okay.
Advancing on. Maybe make some clarity in my understanding. Is the Central Regional Fire Authority be a county government controlled, but representatives from the 3 major cities? And also those 3 major cities supplying administrative positions where needed.
So I guess the easiest way to think about it is think of it as they would be like a school district, the commissioners of the board, and then they have their own structure each. They're all within the county, but they're separate, or the hospital, or the library, or the PUD, or the port. It's a separate, it's not a county structure. It was just, this is who runs the fire and EMS protection in this area.
Oh.
Here are their. Yes, Lynn.
Linda Springer, I just have a quick question. As I said, I attend all the council meetings. If I'm not in the seat, I'm Zoom. I'm hoping that people who are doing Zoom, more and more people do that they are able to ask questions. I'm gonna be out of town next week. I feel these meetings are important. They're not dry. They provide a lot of information. I'd like to be able, if I have a question, be able to raise my hand via Zoom and ask that question. Is that a possibility?
That I don't run those. That would be Corey. Oh, she's the one who runs the Zoom and all that. And I don't know how she structured that. So I
Okay.
don't know.
I'm just, we have those cabins impact board. I'm a trustee, they're on the board. We have 900 people and we're able to do that. It's not that complicated. If it's something the council could look into, I think it would be beneficial. We have a lot of people who are out sick, have a number of reasons they can't be at a meeting, and that would provide everyone opportunity via Zoom. The other thing I want to say is I have the utmost respect. You can't even imagine the respect I have for the police department and the fire department. And I want to thank you. You go out, you put your life on the line. And we all need to be grateful. And I want to say thank you. We appreciate you taking your time and being here. To the council, I know that you've been working hard on this. And Miles, I know that you've been busting your butt. And you are a stand-up straight guy that puts everything into your council position. And I just want to say thank you and thank you for what you do.
Yes, Steve.
So Steve Davis, speaking specifically to the RFA. Chief Hubbard had identified $55 million worth of needs around buildings in Aberdeen. I can speak to that. Okay, so that's first. The question is, does that fund from the RFA? Does it fund from the taxpayers of Aberdeen, Hope and Cosmopolis, Aberdeen? The second question is, the RFA also picks up the liability from the previous people that serve the community. So left one folks and things like that. No, left one stays with the city. They have to stay by law, they have to stay with the city. Because that, so Kazi, do you guys have left one?
We have no.
You have no left lucky, left, yeah.
Right?
So so with the whole left one thing, the
That's
city,
the retirement.
that's their retirement system. And the cities of those employees have to manage that. So it has to stay with that city. Same with the police, if the police all left and went consolidated. The cities are the lucky winners of left one.
So just to answer, so yes, Aberdeen needs some fire stations. When we went through that planning process and yeah, we're in the neighborhood of $50 million to replace our 2 fire stations. That number is a couple of years old, so I'm sure it's probably closer to 50. The city of Aberdeen does not have the bonding capacity to do that. So as it kills me to say, I think our new fire station dreams, as we think of it today, is dead. Because the city cannot do it. There was a clause in the original plan between Aberdeen and Hopeland that Aberdeen was going to do fire station. That is taken out. Because there, again, like I said, there is no financial feasible way within the near future that we're going to be able to do that. It's not that we're not done thinking about it. We're still, hey, what can we do grant wise and things, and our wheels are turning, but just the traditional bonding capacity. What will happen with facilities is they will stay with the cities. And we get to use them as the RFA, you know, $1 for 100 years, whatever it might be. And then if the RFA down the road builds stations on its own, then those facilities would go back to the cities. They retain ownership. So this building would always belong to the city of Cosmopolis. We would just be a long-term leaseholder if you utilize it. And that would be the same for all the stations. And then, like I said, the new station gets built 10, 15 years from now. Those facilities go back to the cities for them to use for what they see. Does that speak to what you're talking about? Okay.
Yes.
I was just going to ask, even when the RFA goes into effect, which I know is, only forward. We were talking about the volunteers that will be, whether just here or in all of the different departments. Would they be hired, trained, supervised, whatever, through the RFA coordinator, or would they be by the cities that they are serving?
It would be by the RFA. Yeah, that they would be essentially a form of an employee of the RFA, and the city would really truly have nothing to do with it.
And when I mentioned the city would provide volunteer services, what I meant was the city of Cosmopolis is familiar with how
The admin side.
the admin side, the paperwork, side of volunteers. Hopeland's not, we don't have volunteers, never have. Aberdeen doesn't, so they don't know the internal operations, right? Like what form do I have to fill out? Is it a W-9 or is it a W-2 or a W-20? We don't know that. They know that. What insurance paperwork, what state paperwork. I just found out this morning from my assistant finance director that the city has to submit a letter with city letterhead to the state insurance that says I have 21 firefighters for the year of 2022. She sent me a copy and I said, what the heck is this for? She goes, we have to send it every year. I don't even know, right? So there's things that they know that we won't. That's when I said that that's why they would handle that, just like Oakland would take finance and fleet maintenance, and Aberdeen would be HR and I can't remember, what- IT, that's what it was. Trying to disperse the workload out.
Okay, it's 7:57, so I do want to respect everyone's time. Again, RFA planning meeting is going to be here next Thursday. It's not as much of a give and take with the public. I mean, it is an official meeting, but there is time for public comment. If people want to see more, learn questions. The next meeting is going to be on the 18th for the council when, if everything falls into place as it's planned, then a vote would come up to see if that plan goes forward. And then if everything goes into place as the planning has been moving forward, it would be on April ballots. But there'll be plenty of other meetings ahead of time. And it is a lengthy plan as it sits, and there's a lot of questions. And so thank you all for your questions. And if you have other questions, you can reach out to myself, the council, Chief Scolding, Chief Miller, Julie, whoever. We want to make sure that people have as much information as possible. So thank you, everyone,
If I
for
could
coming
just
tonight.
make one
Yes.
quick comment. Thank you. And I'm really sincere with this, it's whether good, bad, or indifferent, your thoughts on their RFA, because obviously I'm. I know. Who knew? Imagine that, but in our attempts previously within Aberdeen and Hoquiam, we got nothing even close to this type of community involvement. And I really appreciate it. And I think it speaks volumes for the Cosmopolis community of, your vested interest in it. And I thank you for that. There's more people here tonight than attended combined, probably all of our outreach we did. Granted, it wasn't in the middle of COVID, but still, thank you for that.
Thank you.
And again, like Mayor Polly said, please call Oakland Fire, Aberdeen Fire, email us if you have questions, if anything.
Last one before we go. Destiny, yes.
So are businesses going to be taxed differently with the RFA, or just does it go off the property if you run an in-home business?
It doesn't change anything for the
Yes,
business. It's
right.
all the same.
Thank you. Mhm.
Unless, of course, your business is worth like 500,000. It's set value. It's worth more, then it goes up.
Thank you.